Are you still typing? Because I can literally hear you.
Maybe. I'm done. Don't worry.
You're useless. But also, I love you. This is the weirdest introduction to a DBAle ever. Hello there, everyone, and welcome, of course, to DBAle, the Redgate podcast that is all about data and beer. I, as always, am the effusive, the effervescent, the somewhat, a little bit, slightly, majorly too over-enthusiastic Chris.
What does effusive mean?
Effusive is to, like, give off, right? It's like to...
Right, okay. And I am the effervescent Chris. Did you say
like
effervescent?
I did say effervescent. You could be the ever-present Chris.
Evanescence Chris.
How can you see into my beer? Sorry.
No, that was terrible. You needed to have at least a second line.
I didn't want to screw it up. To be fair, I grew up with Evanescence and I loved that song, so they don't want me butchering it on a podcast. Oh dear. Hello there, everyone, and welcome to Redgate DBAle, of course. Once again, Chris and Chris back again. It's your renegade. I don't know, whatever we are. But we are, of course, here
Renegade? Can you really describe us as renegade?
Back again with your renegade masters.
Yeah, even so, I don't think we could be described as renegades in any sense.
Was that a burp or a hiccup?
I don't think that was anything. I think that was a mic problem.
Oh.
I was just stroking my beard. Maybe it was my beard burping.
Fair enough. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for, what is this, DBAle 20... Six? Goodness knows whatever. Yeah, 26 probably. It's today you've joined us on Nothing's Day, the 613th of March, 2020. And we are proud to be talking to you all about feedback. Ooh, I can feel the warmth, the fuzziness. Oh, give me a hug. Oh, wait, you can't. You're in your house. Anyway, today we're going to be talking all about feedback, both the importance of feedback in a personal sense, but also in a technological sense.
Oh.
And why, have you got your wires crossed?
Yeah, I thought you meant like music.
Do you want to talk about how to reduce feedback in audio tracks?
Hang on.
Oh, you've done too much research.
Yeah, this is all bad now. Okay.
Stop banging your desk. You're going to deafen all of the listeners, or both of them. But of course, today we're going to be talking about feedback and why feedback's important. Now, before we do, of course, and with feedback being our favorite, we thought we'd bring you an extra special beer this week. So Chris and I have both been tasked with going off and finding one of our favorite beers to have for DBAle. Because we're giving positive
the brief when we came up with it was our favorite beer, and now you changed it to one of our favorite beers. Could someone not decide?
So I struggled to decide. I have several favorite beers. And yeah, I struggled. So I've gone with one of my top 20 favorite beers.
Probably at least top 50.
Well, the problem is I like my top 20 so much. There's so little in it that... Plus, my favorite beer is actually brewed by the Ivo Brewery in Somersham in Cambridgeshire in the UK. And unfortunately, they aren't reopening their online shop because they're a small batch brewery. They aren't opening their online shop again until probably a week and a bit's time. So I've gone with something else.
Oh.
Never mind. What have you got, Chris? Tell me, do.
Hey, what have I got to start? What have you got?
Oh, all right, fine. If you want me to go first. I have got toast.
Yeah.
Yay! For all of you listening, it genuinely is a beer called Toast.
Does it taste like toast?
It doesn't. It tastes like really, really good pale ale. They do a couple of different brews, and this is their 5% pale ale. So it's golden, zesty, and planet saving. So effectively, the premise of toast is that they brew it with surplus fresh bread. So where there's fresh bread going surplus that would otherwise be, just food waste, they actually use that to brew the beer. So instead of adding additional kind of supply chain to climate change and having a negative impact on the world, they just brew in their words, we brew our planet-saving beer with surplus fresh bread. All our profits go to charities fixing the food system.
Wow, that's a cool idea. That is
I think so.
Very clever for something that is essentially just grilled bread.
Basically, and something that is 5% volume, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so I'm a big fan of Toast. I'm a big fan of their mission. I think that they've got a fantastic ethos about them. And if you're in the UK, definitely drink more of Toast. Or, of course, if you're abroad, I say abroad, I mean, in your country, then you might also have similar beers available. So definitely check it out because I can highly recommend it and it is delicieux. I
learned something new today.
So what have you got?
I've got something that I'm pretty sure I drank before on this podcast. I definitely drank it before today. That would be very weird.
Show me what you got.
So this is the Westmalle Dubbel.
The Westmalle Trappist Dubbel.
Yes, I am a big fan of Belgian beers. I'm a big fan of Trappist beers. So yeah, this one's pretty good.
So interestingly, I think the Dubbel, the one that you're about to drink, also when we first broke 5,000 listeners for DBAle, I think was in the box.
Really?
So I think you're just subconsciously somewhere, you're identifying that and going, it's a good, strong DBAle beer.
Yeah, I always have at least one of these in my fridge. This and Guinness and Thatcher's was what I was deciding between. Those are my
very West
fridge
Country
mainstays.
Yeah. Yarp.
Yarp.
Fantastic. Oh, well. So for everyone out there who doesn't know about the Westmalle Trappist, how would you describe it?
It's Belgian Trappist beer. So it's I like Trappist beers. I like Belgian beers. The two of them combined, very good. One fun fact that people don't often know is that not all Trappist beers are Belgian. Most people assume that Trappist means Belgian. No, Belgian doesn't mean Trappist. Trappist doesn't mean Belgian. There is an English Trappist brewery. There is a couple of Dutch ones. I think there's a French one. Don't know where the others are. But yeah, it's very sweet. It's very strong. It's just very nice in general.
Oh, very nice. Well, I think we're both good to go. So let's get these open. I'll let you go first as you've got an actual bottle opener.
Here he goes. Wait for the clink. Do you hear it?
Very nice. And I heard that. And I'm going to go for the can open.
Cronk.
Nice. Pull the lever, Cronk.
Oh dear. I've also got a chalice to drink this out of, as you should always do when you have a Belgian beer. That made me sound very, 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 very douchey.
Like a beer snob.
Yes. I only have one chalice. And it's for my Belgian beers.
Gosh, I love this beer. Love me a bit of toast. What's your favorite toast topping? Everyone out there, tweet me at plant-based sequel. Tell me about your toast.
I'm a stickler for just plain old spread. Yeah. You don't need anything fancy. Yeah.
I'm going to one-up you, and I'm going to say that there's actually a spread that I really like from Romania called Zakuska. They also have it in a few Eastern European countries under different names. I think in Bulgaria, it's Liutenica, and it's this beautiful spread of roasted aubergines and or peppers and or mushrooms and of various different vegetables, and it's beautiful on toast. So when you're finally allowed to come around my house again, Chris, I'll get you on the zakuska, just nothing but slice of bread after slice of bread.
Nice.
Right. So
does hummus count?
Oh gosh, I love hummus. Oh my goodness. Yes.
That's the most middle class thing I've ever heard.
I love hummus, you know. Oh,
darling, pass the hummus.
I'm afraid I lack one hummus. Right, we've got our beer, Chris. That's the important bit. Now we're on to the less important bit, and that, of course, is feedback. No, I'm joking. It is quite important.
Yes.
So, obviously, let's start with one of the two aspects here. So we've got to talk about personal feedback, and we've got to talk about like technological feedback. So let's talk about personal feedback first, because we won't spend too much time on it. But why would you say feedback is so important from a personal perspective?
So feedback is really essential for growth, right? How do you know if you're growing or developing or progressing in a way that's positive if you don't have feedback? I like to consider myself as someone who is pretty self-aware, but even me, who is the king of self-awareness, the most modestness, kingness there ever has been, is aware that like other people's perceptions may be a little bit different from my own. And it's not their fault, although I may think it is all their fault. A lot of the time it's because I've maybe not thought things through. That's very typical. Or I've presented things in a way that not all people would agree with. And, you know, we all come from different walks of life. And so something you might think is fairly reasonable, others might disagree with. For example, Chris has given up showering for the last 6 months. It's really noticeable. Because of lockdown, I've not had to tolerate it anymore. But I don't have to give him that feedback because we're no longer in the same room.
This is true. Of course, feedback I would probably still receive within my household. Were it true, of course, were it true. But there's a few distinct forms of feedback here that are important. I would say it breaks up into 3 main categories. And if we're talking about professional feedback, you know, I'm not just talking, there will be times where friends do things or where you do things and friends perceive it, where you have to give like really personal feedback because of friends, family, etc. But from a more professional context, there are 3 main situations where you're likely to be, you know, thinking about feedback. The first of those is receiving feedback. The second of those is giving feedback. And of course, the third is actually feeding back to yourself, which is often overlooked. So I'll clarify the third one there, because I don't just mean going, good job, me. Thank you, me. I mean,
yeah, you do quite enough of that.
I do a lot of that.
Valuable feedback, by the way.
Super valuable.
Take that on board.
I will take that on board. I do too much. I will improve. But no, the giving feedback is important, like you say, because it's important to grow and to understand, you know, the giving and receiving of feedback is a path to growing as an individual and as key. Really making sure that you always think about the feedback you're giving or getting. If you're giving feedback, making sure that it's if it's critical, then it's constructive, because there's no point me just saying to Chris, hey, I think your beard looks greasy, if, you know, I'm not going to actually suggest a way to improve on that situation. It doesn't, by the way, it looks magical.
I know.
And if I'm getting feedback as well, and this is one of the guiding lights of my life, this is one of the things that's helped me kind of improve over time. You should have seen me years ago. My gosh, no one could have helped him. But the receiving of feedback is a blessing. And, you know, we've even been in the position, I think I can say, Chris, I won't mention names or situations, but there's been a situation where you've had, I wouldn't say negative, but constructive feedback for me, and you've then had to give that to me. And actually, I would say that whilst some people might feel defensive about receiving that kind of critical feedback, actually that's a perfect opportunity for you to revisit and enter into that third stage, which is self-feedback. And being, like you say, the king of self-awareness. If you are self-aware, self-awareness doesn't mean just knowing where you are and what you're doing in any given context. Self-awareness is about metrics and about monitoring and about checking in with yourself and, you know, actually being completely honest and vulnerable with yourself and saying, could I have done better there? How can I improve? How can I take this feedback I've been given and actually incorporate that into my own being? But the problem is, like you said, you have to come with a growth mindset, because if you're closed off to feedback, you can't improve. You are fixed at a point in time, and well, that's about it.
I think to me, it's personally something I find very important is always be learning, always be looking to find things you can learn. The reasons that I've left previous roles were because I felt like there wasn't an avenue for me to learn. I got to the point where I basically hit my ceiling, and I could either stay there and sit on my laurels, or I could move on and look to learn something new. And it doesn't have to be like forever expanding yourself outwards as a person, but I think constant progression is a big part of who I am, and constantly thinking about what I can take away and what I can learn from this. And so I definitely get on board with the growth mindset piece, but it's not easy. Like, it's something that you do have to check in with yourself, and you do have to, I think, make a conscious effort to kind of keep in that mental zone. And there's lots of tells I think you can find very, very easily, like where you are in terms of whether you're open and accepting and in that growth mindset area, or whether you are not quite there yet. And things like if someone does really well in the office, in air quotes, of course, if someone say lands a big deal, or if someone produces a great bit of content, or if someone finishes a big project and they get a lot of praise, and recognizing how that makes you feel, does it make you feel happy on their behalf? Does it make you instead a little bit jealous? If someone gives you feedback, how does that make you feel? Does that make you feel defensive? Or does it make you feel like you want to try and understand what that is? And, you know, these things are not black and white. Like, I'm painting it in quite a black and white picture, but there's always mixed emotions when these things happen. Like, I'm always, I'm always looking at like my metrics, and I'm always trying to beat everyone. And I think competitiveness is still a good thing to have in
as long as you're not putting
least.
other people down, right?
Exactly,
as long as you're not trying to actively sabotage others, or you know, healthy competition is a good way to draw out high performance, and it's a really good way of building camaraderie with one another. But at the point that competition becomes almost putting each other down for the sake of your own merit, that's where it crosses from feedback into bullying more so than anything. And you know, I think we could probably talk about this for hours and hours and hours, and I know we're both huge fans of self-awareness, mental resilience, checking in with ourselves, key metrics.
It's unfortunate that you're not very mentally resilient, though.
It's true. I fall over with the slightest gust of wind. But I overheard a video that
it's
Andrea
not true.
was watching.
I bully him relentlessly all day.
Relentlessly, and I bounce back. Yeah, exactly. But I overheard a video that Andrea was listening to the other day, and it made a really nice point that I've incorporated into my own sense of being, and I think is a really good point at which to end the personal feedback section. So let me know if you think that's true. But whenever someone uses the phrase fail, obviously we know if you've never failed, you've never tried anything new, blah, blah, blah. But what I overheard was fail stands for first attempt in learning.
Nice.
And I was like, that's really cool. And failure, in some senses, is feedback of its own. It's the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to grow, the opportunity to be a better you. And I think that's a really important thing to bear in mind.
You didn't fail. You just completed the first iteration.
Exactly. It just so happens that the first iteration didn't deploy properly. But anyway.
So I also want to talk about, I guess, delivering of feedback. I think that's really important. It's important to be receptive to feedback and looking for feedback as well. Like, how can you find ways to look for feedback? It's something that we continuously try and put systems in place in our kind of workplace to incorporate, and with mixed success for sure. But you know, sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. Take the feedback and improve the feedback process. Wait, this is getting very meta. But yeah, delivering feedback, very important.
Yes, absolutely. And knowing how to deliver constructive feedback as well. And working with people to actually improve the way you give feedback as well, to get feedback on your feedback. Wait, no, that's too meta as well. Never mind. Let's move on. So I think the next part of this, and I think we could probably do a whole episode of DBAle on kind of mental resilience, self-awareness, methods for checking in with oneself, that sort of thing. If you're listening and you would actually find that interesting, let us know. Tweet me at PlantBasedSQL, tag him at Kurzweil Chris. Let us know if you'd be interested in hearing a bit more content like that, and we'd be more than happy to put it together.
Yeah, for sure.
So on to the next thing then. Let's talk about the importance of feedback as part of DevOps. Obviously, this is a bit more...
Sorry, before we move on, I guess one more thing that I really want to say, but delivering of feedback. So the delivery of feedback has always... if someone's receptive, then it shouldn't matter as much, but delivery of feedback still really matters, I think. And the top tip for anyone who hasn't kind of gone through training on this or hasn't learned about this before is always even better if. So if there's something you did well and genuinely did well, this would be even better if is like the number one hack for delivering feedback well. It just softens the blow, I guess is maybe the wrong way of phrasing it, but it is incredibly powerful. And I find this in the professional world. I find this in the in your personal life as well. But it just makes the other person know that you're not there to just rip into them, I guess.
Yeah. A compliment sandwich.
Well, that's actually an interesting one you raised, but there's actually a theory that a compliment sandwich is bad, because a compliment
completely agree.
A compliment sandwich will have the opposite effect of what you intend. It will make the other person think that the negative or constructive piece is something that can be forgotten or dismissed a lot more easily. Whereas if you end on the constructive piece, it's something that will they'll take away.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they say, people always remember the first thing and the last thing. And I'm exactly the same with Eurovision. Is as you're going through,
you managed to find a way to shoehorn Eurovision into every conversation I have.
You could put Eurovision in anything. I mean, you get the odd kind of act here and there that really stands out, like Daddy Frere, who did Think About Things, or you've got 2020 Eurovision specifically here, or you've got Little Big, who did one of my absolute favorite songs.
So this is a great example, I guess. Sorry to interrupt, Chris, but if you think about Britain's entry to Eurovision that had Katie Price starring.
Wait, did it? I don't remember
a few years ago now. For example, I think that the song she chose was a really good song. I think it would have been even better if she wasn't the one singing it.
That's good feedback. obviously
anything that you can do to improve Britain's Eurovision entries is definitely needed at this point. Like, how many years in a row have we come bottom of voting?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I don't think we've been bottom for the last few years, if I'm honest. Like, there's been a couple of blips where we have, but I don't know. I nominate Chris Kurzweil for next Eurovision 2021.
I think that the world isn't ready yet for my interpretive heavy metal Mongolian throat singing. But one day,
that's okay. We'll send. Everyone can send a message to Alex Yates and ask him to whip his guitar out again. I've heard some fantastic songs on that guitar.
Oh dear.
Indeed. So let's move on then and talk about feedback as part of DevOps. And we could talk about this all day long. There's so many important aspects when it comes to feedback as part of a DevOps process. So let's actually zoom the scope right in here. So we're going to be talking specifically about a database change management process in more general terms.
Shocker.
So obviously there's a few key points, and the purpose of putting in place good change management practices for the database is so that you can do effectively what Microsoft would coin as shift left. Am I right?
I mean, the amount of times I've heard you say the phrase shift left. Shift left, shift left, shift left. I'm always pressing on my keyboard. It does nothing, Chris. It does nothing.
Well, that's because it should be shift alt left, but that's a story for another day. Effectively, the purpose of shifting left is so that you do more testing, greater validation, better quality development on the left-hand side, so that by the time you're promoting to production, it should be as simple as clicking a button. It really should be very straightforward. Unfortunately, in practice, it doesn't always work like that. But there are a number of ways that you can introduce additional feedback loops into a development cycle. So I think, Chris, why don't we take it in turns and go through what we think are the feedback loops on the left on our way up to prod? What do you think?
All right. Can I start with like the big one then?
Yes.
And just do the whole cycle being shrunk down in iterative steps in the first place.
Right. Good point. Absolutely a good
point.
So
like the whole kind of agile methodology being extended to its kind of logical progression. If you're deploying like as soon as you can, whenever you can, that means that you can take on feedback and pivot around that feedback like instantly, right? So
excellent point.
You see that you have a request from a customer or from a market or from whatever it might be, incorporate that into the next delivery and deploy it out. And the quicker that you can do that, the quicker you can respond to the feedback and the quicker you can kind of progress. There's no better way to build software than by listening to your actual customer requirements and building it around that, right?
Yeah.
And, customers I'm using in the very loosest senses. So
end users.
Yeah, customers may be, well, I think of them as customers still. If you are an operations team, who are your customers? If you are developing software for internal use, who are your customers? Mm-hmm. Like we have customers who we'll talk to. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't think of them as customers. It's just they might not be customers that will give you or spend money directly with you. Still treat them the same.
Interesting. No, that's a really good point, and actually one I didn't even think of. So like the whole cycle in itself as a feedback cycle, there's no point doing a big bang release after 6 months and then getting a huge amount of customer feedback over the following 6 months and then spending another 6 months trying to fix it, when you could work to a 2-week cycle, deploy a minimum viable product and immediately start getting feedback. Oh, could you change that? By the time you get to that same kind of 18-month point on an iterative development cycle, you just are so much better off with so many fewer bugs and so many kind of enhanced features and capabilities that you've been able to pivot and naturally just fit into that market where you should exist. And with the big bang deployment cycles every 6 months, you just end up, you end up not listening to user feedback, but you end up delivering what you believe users want. And those can be two very mismatched things.
Yeah, for sure. And we're lucky with software that this is something that you can most of the time very easily do. Appreciate if you're building houses, this is a lot harder. Like a minimum viable house is
Yes.
basically the house. But yeah. Okay, what's your option as number 2?
Number 2. So number 2, I was thinking a good feedback cycle is a database first methodology.
Okay, that was unexpected. Go ahead.
Excellent. So a lot of people make changes to the code directly. A lot of people make changes to SQL files and things. And,
I get you. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And then they try to apply it to the database and it goes boom. Right?
Yeah.
So actually making sure that you have, and this is kind of a double point. Number 1 is making sure you have an environment that's indicative of production first. So actually make sure you refresh development, testing, QA, pre-prod environments often. Make sure they're up to date, make sure they're representative of production, both in terms of schema and data where possible, obviously sanitized data where possible. And then work on that copy. Because if you're making your change to what is effectively a very recent copy of production and it works, well, then you can better believe it will probably work if you deploy that same change to production. So kind of a double point there. Make your change against a realistic copy, and of course, make it database first instead of code first, because then you get that immediate feedback of, hey, it can run, it's syntactically valid, everything's fine, don't worry, database is good.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. All right, I'm going to go for number 3.
Go for it.
How many numbers are we getting to? What's our limit?
Until we run out of time. And we've got probably about 8 more minutes worth of this segment. We're fine.
Another 88 more minutes. Me and Chris at the end will be like, I can't think of anything. So I'm going to go for the next, I guess, obvious one, but yeah, there's so many different ones here. But I'm going to go for running a database build. So running builds is a great initial point of feedback for software as a whole. Not a typical process when it comes to databases, but literally it makes so much sense, especially if you're running a change script or migration script method of versioning and deploying database changes. So let's say that we have like 5 migration scripts that I've written and I check them into source control. I next should have some system in place that's going to give me feedback as to whether the scripts I've written are a hot load of garbage, hot tip if I wrote them they are, or not. And the build does that in a very nice and neat and fundamental way. So spin up a copy of a database. Ideally, you could do a blank database and rebuild from scratch, or the whole cloners baseline thing that we came out with a few months ago is really cool. Yeah. But you're basically testing those scripts at the fundamental level. Do the scripts actually execute? And if they don't execute, then you've got a problem, because then you know, what's the point of running deployment on scripts that don't even execute, right? Yeah. So you've got instantaneous feedback. Take that, fix the scripts, commit them up. Oh, look, now the build runs. Whoop, we're good. And then when you take those scripts, you run them somewhere else, you know they're going to run.
That's true. That's true.
You might have coded something absolutely diabolically awful, but you know they're going to run.
Yes, exactly. I'm gonna jump back a second, because I think you're already at continuous integration, and I think that you've missed 3 key steps for feedback. That's how much feedback I think is in part of this process. I think you've missed 3 points of feedback there.
3.
Yeah, so as a brief coverage of those three, the first one, static code analysis.
Yeah.
Static code analysis is a small point, but it's a point nonetheless. Applying best practices to the code you are writing against the database, as much as anything, is a really good way of catching out, oh, someone put an asterisk in their select, or someone's declared several parameters and only used most of them, or X, Y, Z. And, applying those
you wrote a stored procedure that was just select star. That's all it was.
There was no from. That's it.
Select what?
Deferred name resolution isn't going to help me here. It's just rubbish.
Select everything.
Select every. Could you imagine? Select star from star, and just leave it there.
Love it.
I'm pretty sure you can probably do that. That's probably valid syntax in some engine. Probably even SQL Server. I just don't even know it. I've never even tried it. So that one. Then the second one is source control. So actually sharing work with your colleagues. Working in a dedicated model where everyone has their own sandbox environments means that people working on the same branch start to diverge quite quickly. So making sure that you are consistently committing, pushing, pulling, applying to your database, and making sure that you and the rest of your team are constantly staying up to date with one another is an excellent way for you to review, give feedback, and validate not only the work that you are doing, but the others within your team. And that allows you to rapidly pivot and improve on any functionality your team is working on.
Makes a lot of sense.
And the third point that I think was missing, pull requests.
Yeah, I knew all of those three were coming. The thing, see, my feedback for you is that I think you did really well in highlighting those three, but I wasn't thinking of it this linearly. We're not
That's fair.
Restrained by just our process. I'm thinking of importance.
Process shouldn't restrain you, Chris. You shouldn't feel restrained by the process. It should be naturally flexible enough to work around whatever you need from your pipeline. But that being said, I am working quite linearly here. But that's what helps me think. So,
faux show.
Excellent feedback. Thank you. The interesting part about pull requests, though, and pull requests probably my favorite part of this whole process. And the reason is because I've seen recently a number of our customers, Redgate customers, get up and running with pull request workflows in Azure DevOps, leveraging SQL change automation and SQL clone, and they're able to spin up copies of the database on demand to then build and deploy changes to from that branch to a live environment so that they no longer have to review just code in Azure DevOps or pull it down, apply it to their own database, and then have to kind of reverse engineer that. There's no better substitute than reviewing a change in a live environment together. It's a concept of a really good concept that allows developers to get almost instantaneous feedback. So I think that's a really good way of doing it. And once all of those steps have passed, and we could also make this Redgate specific and say the validate in SSMS or Visual Studio for change automation builds the database before you're even in source control. But we're not going to do that. But the pull request is an excellent way of validating those changes and then ensuring that they are properly merged back into our main, our trunk, or whatever it is, however we're working.
Yep. And then we put it to CI. And as part of CI, we've got the build. And an optional thing that we quite often talk about is unit testing. Again, True. Another great source of feedback. So you run a selection of tightly defined tests that validate the stored procedures, the functions, mainly stored procedures, if I'm honest, that you've written.
Yeah.
By simply executing them in a dummy environment. And these are things that you don't have to do at build. You can do before then, but it works really nicely at build. It's kind of just a neat way to give you extra validation on the code you've written.
It's interesting. It's like when we talked about testing far earlier on in DBAle, like 4 or 5 or something crazy. I think we also paid homage to test-driven development. But the point is, you don't just build. You don't homage. Porridge. You don't just pay porridge. You don't run a test once in your development environment and then leave it. It's actually included in source control and actually then can be automated as part of the pipeline and filtered out where necessary. So I think that's a really good point.
Everything in source control.
And whilst there's additional feedback loops as well, I think then that brings us on to the natural kind of final step from a continuous integration build as well, which is continuous delivery. Like continuous deployment is definitely a thing, but I wouldn't necessarily say that that in particular is the feedback loop. I would say that personally, I would say that the feedback loop is the continuous delivery where you don't get in the middle, the build is published, you end up with the artifact, and then you release it to an integration or a test environment where you prove that not only can your database be built from scratch, but you can also deploy those changes to later stage environments. So not only can we do 100%, but we can do the delta.
And that leads us on to like the things that I guess we won't go into, but the actual testing you do in test environments, right? So functional testing and performance testing and load testing and all of this weird and wonderful stuff that we don't know anyway near as much about as a lot of you guys probably do.
Yeah, exactly. And if anyone out there is a massive tester, let us know. We'd love to have you on, ask you questions, have a beer, talk about testing and get your insight.
Yeah, cool.
So fabulous. So yeah, we continuously deliver and we know that the quality of our deployments are good. And we've already signed it off in dev. We've signed it off against the pull request. We've signed it off by building it, by testing it, by packaging it, by deploying it. We've done everything we need. We then just go ahead and go deploy, 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 or in some people's cases, deploy all the way up to production, and we are good to go. We can deliver fast and get fast feedback.
Bish, bash, bosh.
Bish, bash, bosh. And that pretty much takes us to the end of the feedback section. And we've talked a lot about feedback there. And I feel like we could continue talking about feedback, but I think we're probably going to have to call it for the sake of time.
And a lot of feedback we'll probably get is stop talking about feedback. It's really, really, really right.
That would be useful feedback. And I'd love to talk about that feedback should anyone wish to offer said feedback. However,
I think
we do.
So I think that it was really good that you asked for feedback there. But personally, I think that you are hammering the point a bit too much. And so your request for feedback on the DBAle episode about feedback, I think could be improved.
I agree. And that's something I will work on as part of my growth mindset. Ding.
Any feedback about how I delivered that?
No, I think that'd be too much. But speaking of feedback, I think there's something that is worthwhile bringing up as part of our section. We haven't sung the intro for a while, so I'm just going to go ahead and introduce it. Hang on. Me, 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 me. Fa, 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 fa. The news.
We got very different tones there.
Yeah, we did. I was not expecting a little beatbox in the background. Background beatbox.
You mean a big beatbox?
It wasn't that loud. So one thing that we should bring up as part of the news and something that's very important that Redgate runs every year is, of course, Chris.
It's the State of Database DevOps Report.
The State of Database DevOps Report. Woohoo! Yeah, so a couple of years ago, we actually got, 1,000 respondents? Something like that. And then last year, we got 2,000 respondents. Or just over. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, every year, you've got people like Dora and Puppet who run the State of DevOps report. And that tells us all about the DevOpsy things people are doing. Oh, hey, I really like containers. I've got Kubernetes out the wazoo. All these sorts of fancy DevOps things. Now, a crucial aspect of that is how people are treating the database as part of their pipelines. Now, interestingly, every year, Redgate runs the State of Database DevOps survey as kind of a report addendum to what Dora and Puppet run. So giving it that that crucial insight into practices in the wider kind of database development ecosystem. So guess what? We're running it again. Woohoo!
I'm shocked.
Yes, well, aren't we all? But no, the State of Database DevOps Report 2021 is available. And Chris, why should these lovely people who are listening to us go and fill it out if they work with databases, any databases?
Well, because it gives us good feedback.
Oh.
It's, yeah. How serendipitous.
Indeed, it's all about feeding that back into the wider community, helping people understand what is best practice, help people understand the direction that the database world is going in. How are you working at the moment? Are you still working with Oracle 9i? Are you still working with SQL Server 2012? Or are you currently using Azure Synapse? Are you using Snowflake? What are you using for your data warehousing, for your database development? Do you fundamentally have your databases under source control? All these sorts of crazy, weird and wacky things. We care about what you have to offer. And the world's biggest database DevOps survey needs you, or needs your feedback.
Absolutely. It's always got great information that comes out of it. And it's really, really interesting seeing the results that come out. I think it's the biggest of its kind. Who knows? It's definitely the most exciting.
It is the most exciting, absolutely. And Chris, where can people go to fill out the survey? Where can they go to get their voice heard?
I don't know. Where do you go?
All right. I've got to do everything around here. If you want to get your voice heard and be part of that feedback, and you want the opportunity to, I believe, win, I think there's a winning incentive as well. You could win a massive, super fantastic gift card or something even better than that. You can go to red-gate.com/DevOps survey. Redgate.com/DevOps survey. That's DEVOPS survey. SURVEY. Get your voice heard, find out about everything that the community is doing, and also be in with a chance to win.
If I'm honest, just Google it.
Yeah, Redgate State of Database DevOps Survey, or redgate.com/DevOps survey. Woohoo!
Or tweet Chris and ask him.
Or tweet me and ask me, and I will share you a link. That's absolutely fine as well, at Plant-Based SQL. Now, we're running out of time, unfortunately.
We don't get to do data breaches.
Well, okay, we can do a data breach. Go on.
So there's a little data breach that comes from a vendor that sells a lot to a lot of hotel booking sites. So it's Prestige Booking. So they had an unsecured S3 bucket that apparently in a month's worth of data was found to have around about 18,000 records. And by looking back at the logs, this data has been open for access for a significant amount of time, to the point where people reckon that this data has been unsecured for around about 10 million rows worth of time.
Oh, so actually it was just 18,000 recently, because I heard it was millions and millions in that unsecured S3 bucket. But what kind of information did that include, Chris?
So that is a lot of payment information specifically. So not only are we hitting kind of personally identifiable information where relevant, but a little bit more, I guess established is probably the right word, but PCI compliance is going to be all over this. There's a lot of credit card numbers, etc., included in this. So if you've booked on basically any hotel booking site within the last few years, then woo!
Let's get changing to them passwords, and your national ID numbers
and credit card numbers.
Anyway, if you want to check that out, it's Prestige Software, right?
Yes, I believe so.
So definitely worth a check out. Cool. So we've only got one final thing to talk about besides the data breach there. So we've got two kind of fun bits of news there. So we've got, well, I say fun, we've got one fun bit of news, the State of Database DevOps survey, and also the classic data breach monthly.
Chris revealing just how exciting he gets about data breaches right there.
It's not about getting excited. It's just, it's nice to have something to talk about.
That's true.
Also, we have a competition.
Oh.
So, Chris, did you want to introduce it?
Yeah. So we'd like to, I guess, get feedback from you guys. So if you have the time, the inclination, if there's anything you'd like us to cover, if there's something you'd like to hear us talk about, then please let us know. We'd also love to hear, I guess, what your favorite holiday drink is as well.
Exactly. So basically, this is a competition that we're running here at DBAle, and effectively, you could win a crate of a beer of your choosing up to a certain value. We'll have to double check. Terms and conditions apply. But effectively, if you want to be in with a chance to win a crate of beer, then let us know. Send us an email, dbale@red-gate.com. Tell us your name, obviously. Tell us what your favorite beer is. Not even what your favorite beer is. What is your favorite holiday tipple? Maybe you don't even drink beer. I don't know. If you prefer wine, maybe you prefer non-alcoholic beverages. Doesn't matter. If you like Cherryade, let us know. And then let us know what you would like to see us talk about in 2021. Give us any feedback, things you like, things you don't like. We'd be more than happy to take that on board. And it's just dbale@red-gate.com. With the subject line, we haven't decided on this. What should be the subject line, Chris?
Cats.
Everything myself, everything. With the subject DBAle, DBL December competition.
I mean, you say this like we get inundated with emails and it'll be hard picking through.
Yeah, okay. Well, just send it with a subject line so that we know that you're sending us an email with your feedback for DBL 2021. If you want to go with DBL December DEC competition, that's fine as well. It'll be easy to pick out. But let us know.
The silent PH.
Competition.
No, in DBL.
Oh dear. And yeah, let us know your feedback. Let us know what you would like to see us drink, what you would like to see us talk about, what your favorite tipple is. We'll put your names all in a hat. And then in DBL, I guess DBL January? Yeah?
Yeah.
DBL January, we will announce the winner. So
we'll run it till the end of the year.
Run it till the end of the year, and then you will win a prize.
Cool.
Basically.
Congratulations in advance, Robert French.
Oh dear, he's going to love that. Oh dear. And anyway, that's brought us pretty much to the end of today's DBL then. So I think it's about time to say thank you to all the listeners. And of course, for anyone who's listened up to this point, thank you so much for supporting DBL. We're very close to 10,000 listens now. So goodness knows how you're all getting by listening to us. But here's a bit of feedback from us to you. We really appreciate you listening, and we love doing DBL. And we've got topics, like I say, for days. So if you want to keep listening to us, please do. Please let us know if you like the show. It's always really great to hear any feedback.
Thank you.
So for now, Chris,
I guess that's it.
It is.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, I've got to bounce to